Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of the e-commerce lab by Ecomcy, the place of everything related to Amazon FBA private label and e-commerce. My name is Vincenzo Toscano, your host, founder, and CEO of Ecomcy. And today we bring you another special guest. His name is Mark Houghton, and he's the director of KATA Global Logistics, which is one of the top companies right now when it comes to helping you with everything in terms of freight forwarding, logistics, and much more. And that's why I wanted to bring Mark today to the podcast, because I know when it comes to logistics, sometimes it can get confusing. Sometimes you know where to even get started or how to even integrate this part or manage this part of the business when it comes to selling online. Because let's be honest, logistics when it comes to selling online is everything nowadays. If you don't have this really streamlined, like you can really be left behind, especially on Amazon, that we know if you go out of stock, it's the end of the world pretty much, right? So that's why I wanted to bring Mark, because I'm sure we're gonna have a very engaging conversation about some of the latest when it comes to, international freight, also what is going on when it comes to prices, and also tips when it comes to how you can be efficient. So Mark, it's a pleasure to have you here on the show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm very well, Vincenzo, and great to be here and looking forward to this open discussion. All things about logistics. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, we are just having a coffee about logistics, right?
Absolutely. This is all we're doing. We're just talking about logistics. It's my game. I like this. I like this. Thank you.
Awesome. So thank you for being on the show. I know the first time we actually met, if I'm not mistaken, was in Vegas, right?
No, 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 no. It's
No?
right on the
Remind me
mass.
again. Remind me again. Remind me again.
Seattle, Seattle, Seattle.
Seattle. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, I'm gonna be honest. I've been traveling so much that it gets confusing,
I, I know how
So
you feel. I know how you feel. You got the right place, but Seattle's
I
good.
know. No worries, no worries. So thank you, Mark. So if you want, let's start first with introducing Kata, because Kata
Mm,
is relatively new to the market, and it's basically been growing very rapidly when it comes to providing services to in the commerce space, to helping with everything when it comes to global logistics. So let's start with a quick intro, and then of course we can dive into all the questions I have for you around logistics. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Vincenzo. So, KATA Global Logistics is, a freight forwarder. It's part of AVASK Group, which gives us a really unique opportunity in the market, because what we're looking to do from a freight forwarding position is provide the end-to-end supply chain solution for any businesses or sellers who wish to expand their business globally, and having that shipping solution alongside of AVASK Group is very powerful. On top of that, we can also offer in-house custom solutions as well. So, having that one point of contact from your journey, from signing up to registering your VAT, to doing your VAT filings, to doing your EPR if applicable, and then providing a shipping service alongside the existing customs team based in the UK and based in the Netherlands, which is the gateway to Europe, as we all know, just gives you that added extra peace of mind that you're in safe hands because you're dealing with one point of
Of course.
contact, which is what we need.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. That's super important, because I also in the past, because I'm also a seller, when you deal with a company that doesn't do everything in-house as you guys are doing, it can be very messy, especially when it comes to the communications of things. It can get very complicated, and I definitely value what you guys bring into the space, a unique solution that is basically one point of contact that can basically help you with everything when it comes to logistics, which, as we're going to start speaking now,
Mm,
it's a very complex side of the business, right? Now, I'm going to start with my first question, because this is a question I get a ton of times. I'm
okay.
sure all the listeners, which a lot of them are Amazon sellers, they get, and it's basically when you getting started with, with deciding they had to basically ship your products. In this case, most of them ship from China. There's always this concern about, how should I do my shipping, because there are different ways of doing it. You can do
Mhm.
it by ocean, you can do it by road, rail, air, etc. So I guess the first question is, what are some of your advice when it comes to when people reach out to Kata, to help them decide what is the most efficient way? Is it based on location? Is it based on timelines? Can you give us a little bit on insights about that? People always have
Yeah,
that question. Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. It's a very common question from a lot of sellers, and we're experiencing this on a day-to-day basis. For us, we like to offer all of our services, so that's air, sea, road, and rail. The
Hmm.
most common ones are obviously sea, because
Yeah.
more cost-wise, sort of for the seller if they're wishing to expand their business overseas. However, if you do wish to have your products shipped urgently, especially this time of year coming into Q4. C alternative might not be the best solution, so air would be the speedier option. But obviously, there's more cost involved in that, so you need to factor that in to your selling price. With regards to ocean, let's focus on that because that's probably the biggest part of a seller
Yeah.
will look into first. So you have FCL, which is full container load, and LCL, which is less
Mm-hmm.
container load. So you really have two options. So what we advise to a seller, if you're shipping, say, a lot of products in one go, you're
Mm-hmm.
probably best to have an FCL solution. It may cost you more, but the long term is you don't have to share that container with anyone else who's selling their products overseas. If
Yeah.
it's a LCL solution, um, it's probably an option where if you don't wish to send, a huge amount of products in one go. So if you're only
Yeah.
sending, say, a couple of pallets at a time, it's probably more cost effective to go to the LCL route. So there is multiple options, and what we try and do is provide the best pricing as possible.
Yeah.
So we have direct links to the carriers. At the moment, the pricing is very competitive in the market, which is great.
Yeah. It's not like COVID times.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say the market is probably more realistic and stable.
Nice. Good.
Yeah, which is nice for everyone, but it's also very competitive. So one of the things
Okay.
yeah, it's very competitive, especially from China at the moment. All I can advise is just be careful on some of the pricing, out there as a seller. If you're being advertised at 800, 900 US dollars, that
Crazy
might not,
prices. Yeah.
yeah,
There's
it's
something fishy always there.
correct.
Yeah.
I definitely say just be careful. And one of the things we pride ourselves on in KATA is having that transparency where we break down all the pricing for you. So there's no hidden costs once your products arrive into its final destination, because that's something we pride ourselves on. So I think for the best tip, to any seller out there listening to this at the moment, is just be mindful if you're looking to ship something from China and it looks a cheap price, ask the right relevant questions to make sure that everything is covered. If it's not, and you don't feel that that's happening, by all means contact KATA, to get better advice. But that's what we try and advise the sellers at the moment, especially existing sellers or new potential sellers.
Of course. Now, you mentioned something very interesting, which is one of the options, especially when you're shipping lower quantities, which is sharing a container with basically other products, right?
Mm.
So I'm sure sometimes this creates confusion with certain people because they want to understand if this creates some kind of basically compliance to your products because you're sharing that container to another person. If it may change your customs. Can you briefly touch on that? Because I know people is always scared, like, oh, I don't want to mix my product with other people in case the pros have an issue or something like that. But I'm sure you can clarify that. What are some of the pros and the drawbacks of sharing a container?
No, absolutely. One of the things we also mentioned what we do in KATA is that, I mean, if you're shipping your goods, especially from China, we like to have the details up front so we can check your
Yeah.
HS codes or commodity codes to ensure
Mm-hmm.
that they're compliant and they meet the regulations of where they're going to be shipped to. So that's something we try and do in advance through our customs team as well to ensure that that sort of criteria and documentation is all correct before we start shipping. And that goes back to the price again, so if you're
Mm-hmm.
having a transparency price, that means you should be getting a transparency service. So with regards to feeling a little bit sort of concerned, if say for instance a product in the LCL shipment and you're mixed with gets pulled for inspection, we have a solution for this. So on arrival in its destination, if a product in that container, especially on LCL, gets pulled for selection, what we can do is take it to a bonded warehouse. We can then offload those goods which are due for inspection, and then we can then forward on or transit on the goods which are not held for inspection. That's that solution we have in place, and it's working very well, especially in the Netherlands. So, especially for air and sea, we have facilities in Rotterdam, we have facilities in Amsterdam, very close to Schiphol Airport, very close
Mm-hmm.
to the harbour, where we have that third party link where we can pick the goods up from airport or pick the goods up from the port, take them to a bonded warehouse, offload the goods. We can then authorize for the customs inspection to take place. But that
Nice.
means that if your goods are not due for inspection, they will carry on in their transit to final
Exactly.
mile.
Yeah.
So yeah, please don't feel scared. But if you're finding you're having issues, just get in contact with me.
Yeah, very nice. You mentioned something there which is also going to be an interesting point to quickly touch on, which is basically Amsterdam, right? Like you
Yes.
basically mentioned that right now, and I'm hearing this more and more after Brexit and all of that.
Mm.
A lot of people is using now this as a hub, basically for importing, to then use that as your expansion into Europe. Can you just high level, without going into much technicality, why that is happening? Why a lot of people is going to Holland now for importing and then using that as a hub to expand to Europe? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Netherlands is the gateway to Europe. That's the word out there. And there's
Mm,
specific reasons to this is why. And this is one of the reasons why we have our in-house customs team.
yeah.
So via the Netherlands, there's Article 23, there's limited fiscal representation. We can do indirect and indirect clearances. And what that gives you is just it's a duty to the ability to defer your duty and VAT.
Mm.
Okay, so you don't have to pay up
It's a
front.
cash flow game, basically.
It's a
It's a
cash
cash
flow
flow game.
game for a seller, and it
Yeah.
also reduces the risk for them as well. So moving your products via Netherlands is also it's a very big port. Okay,
I
and
see.
and I would
Okay.
say the Netherlands customs are a little bit less stricter than maybe the German customs. Am
Yeah,
I
I
technically allowed
heard
to
that.
say this? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the bottom line is yes. But a lot of people still ship through to Hamburg, and what we try and advise to to a lot of our sellers is by all means ship through the Netherlands. We can also provide the final mile delivery into 3PL or into an FBA, into any Amazon. And sometimes a lot of our sellers find it's actually more cost effective to ship via the Netherlands to have that cash flow available and then do the final
Yeah.
mile from say the Netherlands into Germany than it is to do from Hamburg all the way through into Germany. So I think sometimes this is why we try and help our sellers and educate our sellers that sometimes going through Germany is not the final solution. You should also look elsewhere.
Interesting. Now, when it comes to shipping, and this is something that, especially in the Amazon community, a lot of people also have confusion with basically the shipping terms, right? The freight forward terms. And what I mean by this, like, should I do DDP? Should I do DAP? Should I do EXW? So, and this is a minefield. Like, there are so many ways you can attack this, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
know, of course, this can get very technical, which I don't want to go down the road. I just want a high level, like for most people, for what you see on a daily basis, realistically, what are some of the terms that make the most sense and why? Yeah.
I mean, we always try and advise like FOB is probably the best one to use or X works. DDP is definitely a solution you should be looking at. I
Mhm.
do hear on the market that it gets a little bit bad press, and it is DDP
Mm,
actually a DDP service.
I
Um,
see. Okay.
so you have to be very, very careful around this. I think for us as KATA, we try and educate the seller as much as possible. So we try and understand
Mm,
first of all what they're shipping. Is it coming from origin?
yeah.
What Incoterms should be applied to that product? And then let's say further discussions around that is HS codes and commodity codes. But all I'm going to advise at this stage, because we could probably spend an hour on this alone,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
made sense just to pick up the phone and talk to us. But the most common one is FOB and X works. But just I think from a seller's point of view, they need to understand what they're selecting because it is up to the seller at the end of the day to get that correct on their documentation.
Hmm.
And that's why we try and provide that educational piece from the offset to ensure that they understand what they're shipping and what the terms are, because it could go horribly wrong.
Yeah. Awesome.
Mm,
Now, let's also bring into the table. I'm sure you have seen a lot of this, like misconceptions or maybe mistakes you see people doing when using maybe a freight forward service. Like this could be maybe from the point of view that they don't know how to communicate, or maybe they don't really understand the workflow around that, or just in general they don't have the experience when it comes to dealing with a freight forward company. So, are there some tips or maybe some proper way of engaging this? Because let's be honest, for a lot of people engaging with a freight forward company, sometimes the first time. So what is some advice maybe you can provide there, so you can, a seller can do this transition when, for example, working with Kata
mm.
as seamless as possible? Yeah. Yeah.
No, I agree actually, because it can be quite nerve-wracking for a seller who's
Yeah,
spent
exactly.
a lot of time designing
Hmm.
and implementing their product to market,
Yeah.
spending a huge amount of money trying to get it to expand across overseas. And one of the things what we find at the moment is sellers just take logistics as like, okay, it's fine, I'm just going to ship it from A to B, and it just
Yeah.
gets there, and then I sell, and I'm a multi-millionaire. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's the perfect scenario for everyone.
Yeah.
But for me, at the onboarding stage, so what we try and do is we go through a select criteria with at onboarding stage with a seller.
Hmm.
And it all goes back to the educational piece again. And we try and break it down as simple as possible. We try not to confuse the seller when we're onboarding. We try and keep the documentation as simple as possible. We make sure that they, one, they meet all the requirements with their product. So we don't just advise on logistics, because the most important part before you even do logistics is to ensure their product is compliant before it's even
Super
shipped.
important. Yeah,
Super important. So
I
it
know.
meets the regulations, the labeling, to make sure that, even down to the packaging, even if you're shipping
Yeah,
into France, and
I wanted
you
to
know,
mention that sometimes the
yeah,
packaging it's not built for shipping. Once it arrives, it's all destroyed. Sometimes I have seen that.
exactly. And there's a lot of responsibilities around that with EPR, especially in the extended producer responsibility, which is also a vast group can help the sellers with. And this is the beauty of having all of this in under one roof. We can advise the seller, quite confidently how we can expand your business abroad or overseas or all the
Yeah,
rest of the world. We're more than comfortable to do that. And so it's just, for me, it's right at that first stage of when we onboard that seller, or if a seller wishes to, have a new product into market, we just make sure that we give them the best advice and the best educational news as we can, because otherwise, from a logistics point of view, especially from my point of view as a freight forwarder, the last thing we want to do is onboard a seller and just don't tell them the basics.
I
It
know.
is very simple. It is just literally, what we're going to do is import, we're going to export. Everyone can say that, but
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, we just try to
Yeah.
go that extra mile, and we have the capability of full tracking, and we have the capability of having our sellers go onto our systems. They can see where their goods are. They can track live. We
Hmm.
have all this capability, but what it boils down to is, from day one, is the educational part before you even think about shipping your goods with us.
Yeah, I think something that's also super important. This comes down to educational part. Is that
Mm,
people most of the time when they build basically the lead times they need to calculate in terms of ordering products and shipping, they don't understand that most of the time there is a discrepancy there. That's things that we cannot control, right? And
mm,
I wanted to briefly touch on that because I know maybe some people that's listening right now they want to know how can you advise me? Of course, it doesn't need to be perfect, but what is some of your advice to efficiently calculate the lead time it takes from point A to point B, right? This might be the time it takes to get this into the container, the time the container takes to be picking up. And I know it's a very complex question because there is a lot of moving parts. But is there something, maybe a kata or just overall from your experience when it comes to global logistics, you can advise to efficiently calculate lead times when it comes to shipping? Yeah.
there is a lot of calculations out there you can do,
Yeah.
but we yet again we try and keep it very simple. So let's say,
Hmm.
for instance, you're shipping goods from China on sea.
Yeah.
You're realistically looking at 5 to 6 weeks lead time before it even
Okay.
arrives into port destination. So once it gets at port, and then you have to do obviously the import clearances, then you have to arrange for the collection. That's if
Yeah.
everything goes smoothly, of course, and there's no
Yeah.
inspections. Um,
Hmm.
and then you have to get it to 3PL, or into, let's say, Amazon FBA. So
Yeah.
it could take another 4 to 5 working days before we even get into a warehouse. I think what a lot of sellers assume is that as soon as it arrives in port, it's
Yeah.
collected.
It's within
It's
Amazon
collected.
warehouse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they think the Amazon warehouse is literally right next door, and you just unload it and ship it. But no,
Yeah.
we have to arrange the final mile transportation, and that all has, each sort of haulier or carrier we use has to have the licenses, to go into the ports and collect. So it is quite complex. But however, we just give realistic times, especially on
Yeah.
sea freight. On air freight, obviously, it's a lot faster. As soon as it lands into the airport, you have to clear within at least day two. Otherwise, you're going to
Yeah.
be picking up extra costs because the goods are sat on airside, and then you start getting costs from the airport. So it's a bit more of a fast turnaround, but you pay for more. So we just advise all the time. We try and add on an extra day here or an extra week just to be on the safe side. So there's no, like, fouled expectations when the seller then calls in and says, "Why is my goods not an FBA?" Well,
Yeah.
actually, what we try and do is beat that lead time, obviously.
Exactly. Super
Yeah,
important.
yeah. But the beauty is,
Awesome.
the sellers have the opportunity to call us, to find where their
Yeah.
product's there, but they also have the opportunity to log in online with their own personal details and view their
Yeah.
products, and exactly find out where they are.
Okay. Also, another question I get all the time when it comes to this, and maybe you can briefly touch on that as well, is how we can protect ourselves. Because, of course, when we do shipping, there are things that can happen that again we cannot control. And what I mean by this is, based on your experience, do you recommend getting like insurance when it comes to international shipping? And we saw how it usually works, because that's another question I get asked all the time. It's like, should I get my shipment insured? No. What do you recommend? So it would be great to hear your take on that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. I mean, industry standard is reliable on a seller taking out their own insurance.
Okay.
But what we do at KATA, we do have what we call a value-added service where we can offer an
Mm-hmm.
insurance policy to a seller and advise the seller probably what the best insurance is to take. So we use like a preferred insurance
Nice.
business who specializes in freight forward. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something we are starting to roll out slowly.
Okay.
Um, it's in our interest to do this because yet again, it just completes the
Mm-hmm.
complete supply chain. So there's
Yeah.
something we are starting to advocate more and more. But industry standard usually means the seller has to select their own insurance, and that can be painful as well because yet again, if they don't understand the HS codes and the commodity
Eh,
codes and the
Imagine that.
packaging, will they understand
Yeah.
insurance?
And it's
Yeah.
another game, another league.
It
Yeah,
is,
I
it
know.
is, yeah. So we're just trying to take the pain away from from someone just who wants to expand. That's basically it.
Awesome. Now let's also, so we can start bringing the conversation to a closure. I want to briefly
Mhm.
touch also on the tax compliance of things. I saw that you guys offer that as a service, and I think that's super important, especially because every single country is a different world. Like, there's so many different compliance when it comes to international tax and all of that. And you guys being part of AVASK, you have a ton of experience when it comes to taxes as well.
Mm.
So is there something, maybe, in terms of tips or advice, you also recommend when it comes to, the tax compliance when importing it? Like, and what I mean by this is, a lot of people, and I saw this mistake a lot of times, and this got tied a little bit side
Mm.
by side with the custom. They don't investigate what is going to be their code when it comes to importing. They don't know the tariffs they have to pay and all of that. Is that something that you guys at Kata also can provide consulting with? And if so, what is usually the process to navigate that issue? Yeah.
Yeah, to be fair, this is really right at the onboarding stage. So if we engage
Nice.
with a new seller, the first
Mm-hmm.
thing we ask them is okay, where are you looking to expand to? Are you looking to expand in the
Nice.
US, the UK, or the EU? So that's the first
Mm-hmm.
questions.
Mm-hmm.
After that, then it's a case of okay, do you realize you have to be tax registered? You might have to have a URI number.
Mm-hmm.
You might have to be part of IOSS. So you might have to have registration for this as well. And this is all quite new for a seller sometimes. Some of them
Yeah, yeah.
know, some of them are like, I didn't realize this. I didn't realize
Most
I didn't
people
have
think it's
this.
just shipping a package and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
they think it's just going A to B and it's all taken care of. But and this is where we advise, from the point of onboarding, then we can introduce a VASK.
Okay.
So at that point, we you know, from a Kata's point of view, our speciality is the freight forwarding and the
Yeah.
customs piece. From taxation and making sure that your business is registered, then we advise to speak to a VASK group, and that's how we build that seller educational part again. So what we don't want to do is onboard a new seller and say, oh no, we can't do any of that. You know,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
because that's the last thing we want to do. So that's the importance of working with a VAST group, is giving that action another value-added service for Kata by giving that seller the option to go down that route, because it could take months to get a VAT registration.
Of course. Yeah. Makes
And
sense.
they've got their
Yeah.
goods sat in a warehouse saying, well, I want to sell these in the US, but hang on a minute,
I know.
you need to
I know.
apply for the VAT registration first before you even think about shipping your goods. Um,
I know.
so yeah, from our point of view, we consult with Avask and we ensure that again, it's an educational piece. But the
Awesome.
seller has no hidden, there's no hidden agendas. We just make sure that they understand what they're trying to do.
Awesome, Mark. Very good. So I guess my last question will be, is there any, because I know this is a very complex topic and I know you're the expert here. I'm just the student learning from you. So my question from for you would be, is there anything else that you feel like we maybe didn't discuss, or just a last tip or last advice, or things that you're seeing people are doing wrong you want to mention, so we can conclude the episode, you want to bring to the table?
No, I think for me, I think we've covered most bases. I
Mhm.
think for me is just to, you know, for me, it's just understanding what the seller needs.
Of course.
From a shipping point of view, from a VAT registration, and I think we've covered everything. But all I'm going to
Awesome.
say is, if any potential sellers out there who are looking to expand their business and not sure of the
Hmm.
regulations, the compliance, how to ship, who to talk to, then come to us, come to KATA, come to AVASK Group, because we're the right people to work with. And we have a great heritage with AVASK Group, working with them.
Yeah,
We have a great
I know.
customs team in the UK and in the Netherlands, and we're expanding. So,
You
you
guys are
know,
killing it.
yeah, exactly. We are the gateway to Europe. So come and talk to us and let us help you. That's the most important message for me.
Awesome, Mark. In case somebody wants to reach out to you, is there a point of contact you want to share so people can reach out and ask you any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you can click on KATA Global Logistics website, you can upload your details instantly. That will go
Nice.
straight to a member of my team, and you can do the
Awesome.
same with AVASK Group as well. So yeah, very, very simple.
Good. And I know briefly you mentioned before the podcast that I think there's a promotion going on. You want to mention that as well?
Absolutely. So at the moment we're in. Yeah, no, you're right. So for Q4, we're offering a 5% discount on
Awesome.
air and sea. So that will run until the end of December, which is good. We're
Awesome.
getting quite a bit of traction at the moment. And one of the other things we also offer is like a free shipping health check. So
Nice.
if you feel that you're not getting transparency in pricing, and you're not 100% sure what you should be aiming to achieve, looking at shipping routes, import VAT, avoid the extra charges, give KATA a call, upload your details to our system, and we'll give you a call back.
Awesome, Mark. Thank you very much. I'm going to make sure to put all the information down in the description. And in the meantime, I want to thank you for being on the show and see you in the next one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Been a pleasure.
fantastic, Vincenzo.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day. See you soon. Take care.
Thank you, Mark. Bye.